The story takes place in a comfortable, middle-class home that belongs to Sarah Parker and her teenage son, Ethan. Though the neighborhood seems like a safe and happy place, things are about to change in a way no one could have predicted. Ethan is a 17-year-old high school student who seems charming and has everything going for him. He's good-looking, smart, and comes from a loving family. But deep down, Ethan feels lonely. His mom, Sarah, is often busy with work and doesn't have much time for him. This leaves Ethan feeling neglected and wanting more attention. In his search for love and affection, he becomes drawn to Clara, his mother's best friend. Ethan begins to see Clara as someone who gives him the care and attention he's been missing from his mom. What starts as a small attraction turns into an affair, and soon Ethan becomes obsessed. His relationship with Clara will lead him down a dangerous path. Clara is a confident, attractive woman who is close friends with Sarah, Ethan's mom. She's known for her charm and elegance, and people admire her for her beauty and sophistication. Clara enjoys the attention she gets from others, especially from men. However, she hides her own emotional problems and dissatisfaction with her life. When she begins to spend more time with Ethan, Clara starts to enjoy the way he looks at her, and she begins to flirt with him. What starts as harmless attention quickly turns into a full-blown affair. Clara's desire for excitement leads her to make decisions that will ruin lives. Sarah is Ethan's mother, a loving woman who works hard to provide for her family. While she cares deeply for Ethan, her job takes up a lot of her time, and she isn't always able to be there for him. Because of this, Sarah often asks her best friend Clara to look after Ethan when she's busy or away. Little does Sarah know that Clara's friendship with Ethan has turned into something much darker. Though Sarah notices Ethan's behavior has started to change, she doesn't immediately understand what's happening. She trusts Clara and never suspects that her best friend is involved in a secret affair with her son. As the story unfolds, Sarah will have to face a shocking betrayal that will change everything. Sarah and Clara have been best friends for many years. They spend a lot of time together, going to social events, having dinner parties, and meeting up at Sarah's house. Sarah, who works a lot, often leaves her son, Ethan, with Clara when she has other things to do. Clara is like a second mother to Ethan, and Sarah trusts her to take care of him when she's not around. Clara enjoys these moments with Sarah, and Ethan becomes more used to her presence, though he usually keeps his distance. One evening, when Sarah is away for a work trip, Clara invites Ethan to her house. She tells him it's a casual invitation, just the two of them, to spend time together. Ethan, having grown increasingly attached to Clara, eagerly accepts. He arrives at her home, feeling both nervous and excited, unsure of what to expect. The evening starts innocently enough with drinks and light conversation. Clara acts as if she's simply being friendly, making him feel comfortable and at ease in her presence. She offers him a seat on the couch, and they talk about his life, his struggles with school, his relationship with his mother, and his growing feelings of frustration. Clara listens attentively, her gaze focused on him, and her voice is soft and understanding. As the night progresses, the atmosphere between them begins to shift. The conversation grows more intimate, and the tension between them becomes palpable. Clara slowly shifts closer, her touch lingering just a bit longer than necessary when she reaches for his hand or lightly places a hand on his arm. Ethan feels both confused and thrilled, not fully understanding what is happening, but sensing something powerful and exciting building between them. Clara, aware of the effect she's having on him, leans in and softly whispers words of reassurance, offering him a moment of vulnerability, making him feel special and important. At this point, Ethan's feelings of admiration turn into something more intense, something that feels more like desire. Then, in a moment of quiet intimacy, Clara makes her move. She touches his face gently, looking deeply into his eyes, and softly kisses him on the lips. Ethan is shocked, but doesn't pull away, his heart racing. Clara kisses him again, this time more firmly, drawing him in, making him feel as if he's the only one who matters. Kiss is electric, and Ethan, overwhelmed by his feelings for Clara, reciprocates. This marks the beginning of their secret affair. What started as an innocent interaction has now spiraled into something much more forbidden and complex, and neither of them can turn back. Clara, who has carefully maneuvered the situation, enjoys the power she holds over him. She seduces him, not just physically, but emotionally, making him believe that what they share is meaningful and special. As the days go by, the affair between Clara and Ethan intensifies. What started as a single, secret encounter becomes a regular part of their lives. Ethan sneaks around behind his mother's back, lying about his whereabouts, claiming to be hanging out with friends or doing homework. He becomes increasingly distant from his family, especially Sarah, who notices his growing withdrawal but doesn't fully understand the cause. Ethan's thoughts are consumed by Clara. He is constantly thinking about her, replaying their moments together in his mind. The emotional and physical connection with Clara becomes a drug for him, something he craves and needs more of. Clara, meanwhile, continues to manipulate Ethan, making him believe their bond is unique and undeniable. She knows how to play the role of the caring, understanding woman, listening to his every word, comforting him in ways his mother never could. She strokes his ego, telling him how mature and special he is, how much she enjoys his company. Each time they meet, the affair grows more intense, and Clara pushes the boundaries a little further. Ethan feels like he's finally found someone who understands him and gives him the attention he's longed for. But he doesn't see that Clara's affection is just part of her manipulation. She's in control, and Ethan, blinded by his emotions, can't see the web she's weaving around him. As the affair deepens, Ethan becomes more secretive and isolated from everyone around him. He distances himself from his friends, who notice his behavior changes, and spends less and less time with his mother. Sarah's concern grows, but Ethan avoids her questions, not wanting to admit that he's living a double life. He starts lying to her about his plans, claiming he's at school or out with friends when, in reality, he's with Clara. Clara's influence over him becomes stronger, and Ethan starts to believe that their relationship is the most important thing in his life. He's consumed by his feelings for her, unable to see how damaging and dangerous their affair is becoming. The secrecy, guilt, and desire continue to fuel their meetings, creating a toxic but irresistible bond. Ethan becomes more obsessed, and Clara, though starting to feel the weight of the affair and the consequences it could bring, pushes forward, enjoying the attention and control she has over the young, impressionable boy. The affair has crossed into dangerous territory, and neither of them is ready for what comes next. As Ethan's secret relationship with Clara continues, he starts pulling away from his mother, Sarah. He becomes distant, spending more time outside the house and avoiding conversations with her. Sarah notices that Ethan is no longer his usual self. He's quieter, more moody, and often seems to be hiding something. When she tries to talk to him, he gives short answers and acts like he doesn't want to be around her. Sarah feels hurt and confused, not knowing what's going on with her son. She's already busy with work, and now the tension between them makes her feel even more disconnected from him. Ethan, however, is more focused on Clara and starts to neglect his relationship with Sarah, wanting more of Clara's attention. Clara, who enjoyed the attention and control at first, begins to feel guilty and worried as the affair gets more serious. She realizes that Ethan is becoming more emotionally attached, and she fears this will lead to trouble. Clara starts to worry about her friendship with Sarah, knowing that if the affair is discovered, it could ruin everything. She also fears that Ethan might confess the relationship, and she would lose both Sarah's trust and her reputation. Clara tries to distance herself from Ethan, giving him excuses for not seeing him or being alone together. She tells him she's too busy or that she needs some space, but each time she pushes him away, Ethan becomes more frustrated and even more desperate to hold onto her. As Sarah notices her son becoming more secretive and Clara acting differently around him, she begins to feel something isn't right. She sees that Clara seems distracted, and the friendly connection they once had feels distant. Sarah starts to suspect that Clara knows more about Ethan's behavior than she's letting on. Her gut tells her something is wrong, so she finally decides to confront Clara. Sarah asks Clara if she knows why Ethan has been acting strange lately, and if anything is going on between them. Clara quickly denies everything, reassuring Sarah that there's nothing to worry about. She claims that Ethan is just going through a phase, and that she's only trying to help him. Clara's calm answers make Sarah second-guess her suspicions, but deep down, Sarah still feels uneasy. The tension between Ethan and Clara has been building for weeks. Claire, having grown increasingly distant as she worries about the consequences of their secret affair, begins to push Ethan away. She starts to pull back from him, emotionally, trying to sever the intense bond that developed between them. But for Ethan, the rejection is too much to bear. He becomes desperate and consumed by his feelings, unable to accept the idea of Clara shutting him out. One evening, after Clara insists that they need to end their relationship and stop seeing each other, Ethan's emotions boil over. He feels betrayed, abandoned, and utterly lost. In a fit of fury, he storms over to Clara's house, determined to make her acknowledge their connection and to make her see how much he loves her. When he arrives, the two engage in a heated argument. Clara is firm in her decision to end things, telling Ethan that they need to stop their dangerous relationship before it destroys both their lives. In his emotional state, Ethan becomes enraged. The argument escalates quickly, with Ethan pleading for Clara to reconsider. In his heightened emotional state, unable to think clearly, Ethan becomes physical. He grabs Clara in a desperate attempt to make her understand his pain, but things spiral out of control. In the heat of the moment, during the struggle, Ethan unintentionally kills her. Whether by suffocation in the heat of the argument, or by striking her with a blunt object in a fit of anger, Ethan doesn't fully realize what he's done until it's too late. He stands over her lifeless body, shock and guilt taking over him as he comprehends the enormity of his actions. The love he once felt for Clara is replaced by a deep, terrifying realization that he's crossed an irreversible line. The next day, Sarah, unaware of the tragic events that have unfolded, arrives at Clara's house for their usual meeting. Clara hadn't answered her phone, and Sarah is worried, sensing that something is off. When she enters the house, she's horrified to find Clara's lifeless body lying in a dimly lit room. At first glance, it seems like Clara might have taken her own life. The scene is carefully arranged. There are no signs of struggle, and Clara's posture is eerily peaceful, as if she had planned the act. A note, seemingly a suicide note, is found nearby, adding to the illusion that Clara ended her own life. Sarah is devastated, overcome with grief and confusion. The thought of her best friend committing suicide is almost too much to bear. She calls the authorities immediately. Detective Ryan Cole is assigned to the case, and he arrives quickly to begin his investigation. However, despite the apparent suicide, something doesn't sit right with Detective Cole. As he examines the scene, he notices small details that suggest foul play. The note seems off, not matching Clara's usual handwriting, and the way the body is positioned seems too staged. There are also subtle inconsistencies in the scene that make Cole suspect that this wasn't a suicide, but a carefully crafted murder. Cole begins to piece together the evidence, and soon his suspicion shifts to Ethan. He notices Ethan's odd behavior. When questioned, his emotional reactions are erratic, and his answers don't quite align with the timeline of events. Cole starts to dig deeper, trying to uncover the truth behind Clara's death, sensing that what initially appeared to be a tragic suicide was, in fact, something far darker. As Detective Cole digs deeper, he starts to piece together a picture of an increasingly strained relationship between Ethan and Clara. There are accounts from people who had noticed Ethan's odd behavior around Clara, as well as his growing emotional distress. Cole questions people in the community and uncovers that there were rumors about Clara and Ethan's relationship, though no one had concrete proof. The more Cole investigates, the more it becomes clear that something more sinister might be at play than just a tragic suicide. As the investigation progresses, Cole uncovers key evidence that links Ethan to Clara in ways Sarah never suspected. The breakthrough comes when Cole reviews Clara's phone records, finding several texts and calls between her and Ethan in the days leading up to her death. The messages suggest a secret relationship, one that went far beyond friendship. Surveillance footage from a local convenience store also shows Ethan leaving Clara's house the night before her death, confirming his presence at the scene. The combination of these findings, along with a few cryptic messages from Ethan that his friends recall, makes Ethan the prime suspect in Clara's murder. Cole's suspicions grow when he uncovers footage from a nearby camera that shows Ethan and Clara having a heated conversation just hours before her death. The footage reveals Clara pushing Ethan away, her body language cold and rejecting. In the days following her death, Ethan's behavior becomes increasingly erratic. He starts acting paranoid, more withdrawn, and more defensive when questioned about his whereabouts. Friends and classmates also report that Ethan has become obsessed with Clara and that he had been devastated when she started to pull away from him. As Detective Cole's investigation tightens around him, Ethan's guilt and fear of being caught begin to take a heavy toll. In a final, desperate attempt to clear his conscience, Ethan has a breakdown and confesses to the murder. In a tearful and frantic confession, he admits to the affair, describing how it started innocently enough, but how it soon spiraled out of control. He explains how he grew emotionally attached to Clara, convinced that their bond was real, even though Clara had been playing with his feelings the entire time. Ethan reveals how the night of the murder, Clara rejected him completely, demanding that he end all contact with her. His emotions, already tangled with love and rejection, exploded in anger. In a fit of rage, he went to her house to confront her, hoping she would acknowledge their connection. What followed was a violent struggle. In the heat of the moment, Ethan unintentionally killed Clara, either by suffocating her in a frenzy or striking her with a blunt object in the chaos of the confrontation. He didn't fully comprehend what he had done until it was too late by then. Clara was dead, and Ethan was left to deal with the horror of his actions. Ethan's confession is chilling, not only because of the violence he admits to, but because it reveals just how deeply he was manipulated by Clara's actions and how his own desperation and confusion drove him to make the fatal choice. Detective Cole listens carefully as Ethan recounts the affair and the tragic chain of events that led to Clara's death, knowing that the young man is now trapped in his own web of lies and guilt. When Sarah learns the truth about Clara's death and the horrifying revelation of Ethan's involvement, she is overwhelmed with shock and disbelief. The betrayal cuts deep, as Clara was not just a friend, but a woman Sarah trusted implicitly. The pain of knowing that her son the child she raised and loved, was responsible for such a devastating crime, feels like an unbearable weight on her heart. As she processes the enormity of the situation, Sarah is filled with a whirlwind of emotions, anger, sadness, confusion, and a profound sense of loss. The death of her best friend leaves a gaping hole in her life, and the betrayal of Ethan, the very person she had protected and cared for, is an unbearable blow. Every moment she shared with Claire now feels tainted by the knowledge of the affair, and she struggles to reconcile the son she thought she knew with the person capable of such violence. Sarah's world, once grounded in trust and love, shatters completely, leaving her isolated and struggling to find any sense of peace. The aftermath of the murder quickly spirals into public chaos. Ethan is arrested and charged with the murder of Clara Williams. As the investigation unfolds, the details of the affair between Ethan and Clara come to light, exposing the forbidden relationship that led to the tragic events. The town is rocked by the shocking revelation, and the media frenzy only intensifies the pain for everyone involved. The affair, once a private matter, is now on display for the world to see, and Ethan becomes the subject of public scrutiny. As the trial begins, the full extent of the affair's toxic and destructive nature is revealed. Witness testimonies, phone records, and video footage all point to Ethan's involvement in Clara's death, and his once promising future seems to slip further away with each passing day. The courtroom becomes a stage for the tragic tale of a young man consumed by desire and betrayal, and the community watches in disbelief as the full scope of Ethan's actions unfolds. Throughout the trial, Ethan struggles to maintain any semblance of composure, but his guilt is evident in his every word and gesture. The once charming high school senior is now a broken figure, facing the consequences of his actions. In the solitude of his prison cell, Ethan is left to reflect on the events that led to Clara's death and his role in the tragedy. His mind is consumed by regret and shame as he replays the moments that pushed him to the point of violence. The affair that once seemed thrilling now feels like a web of lies and manipulation, and Ethan realizes too late how deeply he was entangled in it. He is overwhelmed by the realization that his desperate need for attention and love ultimately destroyed the relationships that mattered most to him, his relationship with his mother and his connection with Clara. The isolation of prison, once a consequence he never fully grasped, now feels like an eternity of punishment for the choices he made in a fit of anger and confusion. His thoughts turn to Clara, and the guilt of what he did to her consumes him, knowing he took away someone who had been a constant presence in his life. Sarah, on the other hand, is left to cope with the heartbreak of losing Clara in such a brutal way, while also trying to come to terms with the realization that her own son was capable of murder. The betrayal she feels is compounded by the grief of knowing that her trust in both her best friend and her child was broken in the most unimaginable way. She struggles to process the complexity of her emotions, love for her son, sorrow for the life he has ruined, and anger at the pain he has caused. She finds herself questioning everything she thought she knew about Ethan, the boy she raised, and the choices he made that led to this tragic end. As time goes on, Sarah tries to find a way to heal, but the wounds left by both Clara's death and Ethan's actions run too deep.